Oh, YouTube. Welcome back. I'm Taylor, or welcome to my channel. Whatever. One of these days I'll figure out a sweet intro and I'll stick with it. But until then, hi, how you doing? This is my weekly trade paperback review show where I'll be reviewing Sandman. The Doll's House. Did it put me to sleep or did it leave me wanting more? Yeah, that was awful. I'll get to this in a second. Also, keep watching this video to figure out who won last week's giveaway for Ex Machina, the first 100 days. So, yeah, I'll be giving this one away too. So, I don't know, keep watching. Find out how to win it. And, yeah, let's get into it. I read this probably close to when it first came out. Not exactly, but this book came out in 1990. It's written by Neil Gaiman, mostly illustrated by Mike Dragonberg, with inks by Malcolm Jones III. Although there's a couple other guest artists in here, like Chris Bachalo does an issue, and then there's another one I can't remember who the name of. But yeah, I was in high school when this book first came out, and I did not get the Sandman when it was initially released, but I did get it not long after. There's a slip trade paperback of like 3 volumes in a slipcase, and I had that. And and then from there I kind of read this series and collected it pretty obsessively until it ended at issue 75. And then yeah, that was the end of it. I was a huge the Sandman fan when it first came out, but I have not really read it since. And so it's been a while, and I wanted to revisit this at the end of the year for a couple of reasons. I thought it'd be a nice, pleasant way to end the year, even though it's not necessarily a pleasant story. And I wanted to pass this along to hopefully somebody that hasn't read it, even though this is not maybe the best intro to it, and I'll get into that too, but whatever. It's fine. So, because I read this so long ago, and because I really enjoyed it when it first came out, I don't know if I'm going to have the most objective review of this, because it has that nostalgic place in my heart. And there are certain other books and stuff that I remember as reading as a kid or when I was younger that I feel the same way about, like the Chronicles of Narnia or Roger Zelazny's Amber novels. I probably can't really objectively review them because, like, when I start rereading, it just brings up this sort of like flood of how I was feeling when I first read it. And so that's what's going on here a bit, but I'll do my best. And so yeah, The Sandman, The Doll's House, written by Neil Gaiman, like I said, and this does not collect the first volume of the book. This is the issues 8 through 16, called The Doll's House. It's an interesting, odd volume. I found this used at a comic shop for very cheap, and I picked it up because I no longer have the slipcase or any of the original issues. They were all lost in a flood or water damage, and so yeah, I've been slowly rebuilding my collection and yeah, going from there. I do have issue number 1, thanks to a really great AOK, and I have issue number 8, thanks to a really great AOK. One from Nola Comics and one from Slotted Up 513. So, the 503? Can't remember. I can't remember the number for Slotty's numbers. But yeah, part of why this is an odd collection, though, is because it includes issues 8 and 9. And issue 8 is the first introduction of Death, and it's the Death the character, and then issue 9 is a one-issue sort of parable fable, and then issues 10 through 16 are mostly the Dollhouse, except for there's one issue in the middle that's not really tied in. It's a very Neil Gaiman-y kind of book. And what I mean by that is Neil Gaiman likes to build universes and archetypes and fables and construct these entire elaborate systems that could be belief systems, almost. Like he did American Gods, where he sort of reinvented all these different pantheons of gods and had them fighting for control over humanity with a new pantheon of gods. This is sort of similar. Sandman is a member of the Endless, the dream entity, and there's 7 Endless, and you meet them throughout the course of the book. Not in this volume, but they're sort of archetypes of different things, and yeah, it's a very Neil Gaiman-y thing. And then the stories read like a combination of gothic horror, 80s, 90s angst, and parables and fables. So it's a sort of a mishmash, but it works pretty well. Not all these issues are... There's a little bit of unevenness in here as far as that goes because of the nature of this weird volume. Like the first issue is sort of hopeful, take on death, and then there's a sort of ominous one-issue fable, and then the Doll's House, which is its own sort of multi-issue gothic horror fable. And you meet some horrific things and people and stuff in here. You meet some good. You learn more about the dreaming and the land and stuff. But if you're not familiar with death and dream or the Sandman, this might be a little bit difficult to get into, just because like it touches on things that happened in issues that are not in here. Briefly, I mean, it basically, the Sandman was captured and held for a bunch of years and escaped, and then this is the journey. The book, all of the Sandman is the journey, like post-escape, to sort of the end of his time as the dreaming. And this is in the middle there, but like you don't need a ton else to get into this. So that description alone should give you where you're going. The main thing of the dollhouse is that there are all these characters that live sort of in a house, possibly a doll's house. And there's also talking about humanity as dolls, or the endless as dolls, or people, or whatever. And multi-layered, it's like a trifle. I don't know what that means. It's like a layer cake. And yeah, it's pretty darn good, and it holds up pretty well. If I had any nitpicking as far as the writing goes, is it is fairly dense. It's not the quickest read in the world, which I don't mind. But there are times when it reads more like a bit of a novel than a comic. And Neil does like to have a lot of exposition in here, and some of it I think probably could have been told pictorially without having quite as much info just written on the page. But that's a fairly minor nitpick. It does, for the most part, hold up pretty well, in my humble opinion, except for the technology has changed a bit, and you know, there's some things that that don't quite stand up, just because of the nature of when it was written. It was written pre-internet for the most part. I mean, internet existed technically, but like, there's things that would be done differently now. Like if it was set in present day, and the characters do look a little bit gothy in their design. Like you know, the dreaming of the Sandman looks like he could be the lead singer of the Cure, pretty easily. And some of that gets a little bit over the top, and a little bit like, oh yeah, I can see why the '90s, all the goth kids kind of wanted to dress like the Sandman. They'd have the big hair like Sandman and wore ankhs around their neck like Death, but. That aside, it's still great, and the art, even with the guest artist, is still pretty solid. There's Mark Dragonberg, and especially with Malcolm Jones the third doing the inking on these books. It's a very sketchy style and very kind of gritty. With a definitely pays homage to like some of the House of Mystery kind of stuff and the older like horror elements of the day, horror tales. And there's like fairly sparse, minimal things going on. Not a ton of background on any of these things. Solid, flat colors because, again, it was done in the 80s. And this is printed on uncoated stock, which I really like because it's pretty close to how it would be when it was originally printed in the late 80s. There are some like photocopied elements and stuff that where they're playing around with that pre-computer. There's a little bit of nudity here, so that bothers you. You don't want this book. But yeah, I mean, even like with the fill-in artist, I think there is a nice enough sense of continuity that it carries along. And the fill-in artists are on the issues that are not part of the Doll's House, the main A storyline, so that also works pretty well. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was a trip down memory lane for me. It makes me want to reread the entire series, which I probably will do digitally. I'm not sure how it'll hold up digitally. I've not looked at it on the DC Unlimited yet, but I got a feeling the colors are going to not translate super well unless they tone them down for the screen, because like this works pretty well on the newsprint-ish or the uncoated stock, but I think as soon as you get it onto the screen or onto like a coated paper, it would look really bright and really garish. So I'm hoping it's toned down a little. Kind of doubt it, but we'll see. And there's some overprinting going on here, which they did, and like I dig like it when you get these sort of like different blacks from where they had the color steps going and like all that kind of stuff. And I just it helps with the sense of nostalgia for me, but I also really do think it helps to like helps their reading experience. Like it feels like you're reading a pulp gothic horror romance whatever story, and a lot of that does have to do with the tactile nature of this, the paper quality, the print quality. It even smells like an old book. You know, you get that old book smell because it's been I wrapped up for about 25 years, maybe longer. Damn, I'm old. But yeah, like I said, this is not going to be my most objective review. But if you've never read The Sandman, I think it's definitely worth reading. It's not whether or not it's like a seminal work or like one of the more important comics ever written. That's maybe up for debate nowadays. But what this did do at the time was really change the landscape of comics. Like until like there's other indie books and like it changed the nature of indie comics for the even though this is a DC comic, it changed the nature of like quote unquote indie books. The Watchmen also helped, obviously. Now Watchmen is a seminal work, but the Sandman was like a long, sprawling narrative, and like with Vertigo and all these other books they had, like they changed comics, and like these books probably sold better than like mainstream comics do now. It was just like the height of like comic mania, and but as opposed to like say X-Men 1 or ASM 300 or whatever, Neil and these were really interested in the storytelling part of it all, and they told like complex adult tales with adult themes, and yeah, they were not meant for kids, and like this was sort of comics growing up. And it led to some good and some bad. Like I think you can trace a direct line from Neil Gaiman to say James Tynion. Like the something is killing the children. Nice house on the lake. None of that would exist without this having paved the way before it. And so I think there's something to be said for that and paying homage to I think if you're into any of today's indie fiction, indie comic, mainstream indie, which I know maybe sounds like an oxymoronic term, but I think it's pretty accurate. Like if you read anything by Boom Studios or anything by AWA or Vault or Scout, you owe it to yourself to read The Sandman at least once in your life. And if you've not read it before, this is the good volume to jump in, and maybe not the perfect volume, but it's your chance to do it for nothing. And so I will tell you in a second how to win this one. In the meantime, let me just go over who won this one. So, this book goes to the White Knight, the White Shadow, the embodiment of AOKs and whatever, the suburban monster, the greatness of America, whatever you want to call him, Mr. Chip Getler. Did I point in the right thing? Yeah, White Shadow. Chip, hit me up, and I will get this out to you. And so, yeah. Just hit me up on Instagram. Give me your address, and I'll get it out to you. Now, in order to win this, let's see, how can I give this one away? Okay, first of all, the usual rules sort of apply. Please be subscribed to my channel. Please hit the like button on this video. Please hit the notification bell so you know when I go live. And also, please be a U.S. resident, or at the very least have a U.S. mailing address where I can get this out to you. And then to win it, leave a comment down below letting me know like a comic that you read, or even it could be a book or whatever that you read growing up that had a lot of meaning to you that like you would like to revisit. So leave that down below. And if there isn't anything, I don't know, whatever. Lie. Fake it. Make it up. Make a dream. Oh, yeah. And for being about Sandman, the book is really more about humanity and people and stuff as a whole. Wrapped around the element of this like sort of monstrous dream character that's like discovering his humanity and becoming more human as the book goes along. So forgot to probably mention that. It's a dense little book. And I think you'll like it. So I'm gonna get out of here. It's my last one of these rambling nonsense kind of reviews for 2021. Thanks for enjoying the ride with me. And I'll see you in 2022. Oh yeah, even if we're all living nightmare, don't be a dick about it. See ya.